5 big financial mistakes that Indian women are making after they get married.
Women are outsourcing all the money matters to their husbands. So everything from the bank account to property, investment, insurance matters, emergency funds, everything has been like, my husband takes care of it, so I don't need to get involved in this. Do you think this is a common mistake that you see in people around you?
Definitely.
What would you advise the woman to do to maintain some financial stability during this career break?
When the entire family is going to be dependent only on one person, there is a bigger need of an emergency fund. The first step when you want to get started with investing is really understanding.
Is this also a mistake that you see that your clients make where they don't have their own personal emergency funds or own personal cash? The other financial mistake, spend first mindset. Is there a different way you would recommend women to plan their finances in terms of their expenses and savings?
The first thing I do is to start putting aside money for that. I don't depend on the end of the month to think about how much I can contribute to that goal.
What's a general percentage of saving that you would say that we should make out of our household income?
It should be between.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast, the podcast that is redefining parenting in Indian families. I am Rinie Gupta. I'm a pediatric sleep consultant and the co-host of this show. We release new episodes every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe or follow on the platform of your choice. Before we get started with this episode, I want to ask you a few questions. Have you ever felt like you're in a financially weaker position after you got married and had kids because you had to take a step back in your career? Have you ever felt like you didn't have the authority to spend money on something and needed to seek the permission of your husband or another family member before you went ahead to do so? Have you felt like you don't have enough of a say in your family's financial decisions or don't even have enough information about your family's finances? Or perhaps you've ever felt like you don't have enough financial security for your future without relying on your partner. If you said yes to any of these questions, then this episode is for you. In today's episode, we will be discussing the 5 big financial mistakes that Indian women are making after they get married and have kids that are keeping them financially weak and dependent in the future. I have seen women in my mother's generation make these mistakes, and sadly, women like you and I are continuing to make these mistakes. And to teach us how to rectify these mistakes, we have invited Arpita Sinha. She is a personal finance advisor and the co-founder of Cashvisory. Arpita is certified by the Institute of Banking and Finance Singapore and has over 8 years of experience in personal finance to tell women how they can improve their financial standing. Because believe me, that is one of the most important ways that you can empower yourself. And trust me, these 5 financial mistakes that you and I are making unknowingly in our daily lives, we need to take a stand to rectify them and to learn how to do this. And Arpita is going to be here with us to teach us all about it. So without further ado, let's welcome Arpita to this episode to get this conversation started.
Hi, welcome Arpita. Thank you so much for joining us on the Modern Indian Parent Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks a lot, Rinie. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast and looking forward to really a bunch of exciting things to discuss.
When it comes to finance, it's such a male-dominated field that it's already so refreshing to have a strong female voice who knows what she's doing, and she's here to advise us on these 5 big financial mistakes that women are making that are keeping them financially dependent and getting them stuck in these cycles that we can definitely break out of if we can fix those 5 mistakes. Okay, so I came up with this list of these 5 mistakes based on my personal experiences, based on what I've seen my mother do, based on what I see in my society. And I would love to get an input from you as an expert in terms of if you think that this is a mistake and what can we do to actually rectify it. Okay, so let's get started with the first mistake that I see women make is women are outsourcing all the money matters to their husbands. So everything from the bank account to property, investments, insurance matters, emergency funds. I feel that women just don't have enough visibility and control over these things because everything has been like, my husband takes care of it, so I don't need to get involved in this. Do you think this is a common mistake that you see in people around you?
Definitely. I think, Rinie, before I even get into a solution, I would just like to share that I'm a big advocate of women financial empowerment, right? And luckily, we have been born in a generation where more and more women are joining the workforce and having their own incomes. In fact, and that is across different segments, whether it's rural India or urban India or tier one cities, more and more women are participating, in the workforce and contributing to the GDP. But like you mentioned, right? This dependence on their male counterparts for financial planning or just simple financial decisions, that is something that I feel that we still have a long way to go. And it's primarily just because, women traditionally have not been so involved in more of the big financial decisions, I would say. I think for the longest time, women have been in charge of the household expenses, right? Because they used to be the primary caregivers and, taking care of the households. But this dependence has come because of the traditional gender roles, and it's still something that we haven't moved away from. And this is one of the biggest mistakes women are making today, given that now most households are dual income households, and that needs both the brains to participate in future planning. And that impacts the lives of women and the family more than they imagine, because just thinking about their own future, their child's future, where they need to have an equal say, especially given that they're contributing to the household income. If that is something that they are blindsided by, it's a recipe for disaster in times to come. And when I say disaster, it doesn't always mean extreme circumstances. What if the breadwinner has a disability or death, or what if you go through divorce? But I'm not just talking about those. I'm also talking about, what if your thought process or your ambitions in life or the circumstances that you're going to face are different from that of your partners. For example, very simple case that I can talk about for myself, the family backgrounds that I've seen in my own families for both partners have been very different a lot of times, right? A lot of times, let's say my partner's parents may be self-dependent for their retirement, but maybe I need to support my parents for their retirement goals. Now, how do you go about that? How much do you depend on your partner to plan for your parents' retirement, right? And that is why it's extremely important for women to participate in the financial planning for the household, for their family, for themselves, right from day one.
Absolutely. And I think when we are outsourcing the money matters to the husband, it also comes with the assumption that they are good at it. We assume
Okay, absolutely.
they must be making good decisions, they must be investing our money well, they must be making good decisions that supports the family. It's only, you may realize in times of crisis that those decisions were not the best decisions. And then somewhere you feel like, had I had the visibility, had I put in the input in terms of knowing what's happening, we might have been better off as a family. So as an advisor, if a woman comes to you and says, I don't know what's happening, I don't know what our bank balances are, I don't know how much assets we have, I don't know what our insurances are, what is the first thing you would advise them to go and do?
We have that scenario happening a lot of times, more often that you would imagine. And I think there are very simple steps that you can take to, at least get started. It will not happen overnight that you have almost the same level of knowledge or involvement in your finances, but very simple things that I advise women like these, women who approach me with this problem to take is just having a list of all the financial investments or statements. For example, if you have FDs, you have investments, SIPs, mutual funds, stock portfolios, just have a knowledge of all these accounts and the balance is there. You don't need to get started with investing right away, or just making the trade calls. You don't have to do that. Just awareness is one very simple step, and it all starts with a joint account. If you already have a joint account and still you are kind of unaware of what's happening in the finances, I think having regular communication with your partner is the next important step that you need to take. That okay, we have all these accounts, these are the funds that we have. Let's discuss regularly on what is the plan moving forward. And again, huge warning, your partner is not always good at it. You might just be better at it if you start working towards it.
Absolutely. And I feel like something as simple as a monthly meeting. Just have a monthly meetup. And if you are tech savvy, then you use an Excel sheet. If not, you have a diary in which you're updating. Husband and I did is that we just had to sit together and look at our numbers. And turns out neither of us have that much clarity until we actually really put in how much are you bringing in? How much am I bringing in? What are our credit card bills? What are our investments? How much money we are sending to the parents? So when we put all those things together, it really gave us a good look at what's happening. And I feel If you have zero visibility right now, this is the first step. Get visibility before you can demand control, before you can demand a decision
Definitely.
making power over this. Let's at least get to know what's happening. And I think this is honestly the first step, because the second mistake that I see families make, and honestly that is something that I have also made for a long time, is basically not having my own money. There's a scenario which I've seen a lot of like millennial couples now, in which the finances are divided before they get married, and then even after they get married the finances continue to stay sort of like divided. All right. Or it's a possibility where the woman, after they get married, they just start transferring all their salary to their husband, which is ties in with the first mistake, because they're just letting the husband handle everything and they don't have their own money, their own emergency funds. Is this also a mistake that you see that your clients make, where they don't have their own personal emergency funds or own personal cash?
Yeah, and especially with women, right? Because it's again like, back to the gender roles. It's been so ingrained in us that we always think about family first, right? And it just happens to all of us, happens to me as well. That, somehow, somewhere we forget that individuality, right? Whether it's because like you're so madly in love with a partner, or whether it's like, something that is traditionally ingrained in you that, you think about family first. I think a lot of women really do not mind transferring over the entire control of all their finances to their family members. It's just that once you have your own income and you have your own life, a lot of small little financial decisions you need to be empowered to make for yourselves. And how would you do that if you're not even keeping your money with yourself? And it
Yes.
could be, I don't know, not just talking about splurging on shopping, right? Which is unfortunately always associated with women spending. But also nowadays we're seeing women planning for their own future, planning for their parents, for planning for their children, for all these small little things. If you're always having to involve your partner or depend on your partner, involving partner is fine, but depend on your partner, that kind of makes creates unnecessary hindrances. So I think it's extremely important to at least have your own bank account as well. And a very simple practice that we follow in my household, or even advise most of the women, is that have a joint account, which is, like I mentioned in the previous mistake, that have a joint account to have visibility for all the household matters, right? And then it's completely fine for both the partners to have their individual accounts for their, like, individual expenses. Like if I want to do yoga class, I mean, seriously, it doesn't have to go for family expenses. And it's good, like it helps in terms of budgeting as well, right? You know where the money is going, so you have given yourself this much money just to take care of your own needs.
We are not saying that like you are maintaining a personal account from the perspective of like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody about this expense, or if my husband finds out then it'll be a big problem. It's more about giving yourself that autonomy to be able to make certain decisions. That's why you have that personal account. And I feel emergency funds is also a very big thing. Let's not forget that there are going to be scenarios where you may need to have access to your own money, and in situations like this, you don't want to have to turn to your partner or anybody else for that. So that definitely warrants that need for that personal bank account. So what is a system that in your opinion works well for a couple? So let's say we are right now, we sort of understand that there needs to be a joint account. And then there is, let's say, the personal account for the husband and personal account for the wife. How would you make this work? Would you recommend them to transfer set amounts of money to the joint account and keep set amounts of money in their own account based on whatever their monthly pay is? Or would you recommend a percentage, like, you transfer 80% of your salary and I transfer 80% of my salary, and then whatever is left is what it is for the personal? So how would you make that?
Right.
How would you advise a couple to make that work?
I think operationally it's truly subjective, right? Depending on every household. Now, for example, we can take like two or three standard cases that can happen. One is like a husband and wife have like, equivalent salary, a very similar range. In that case, you can just go purely by percentage, that, this much I dedicate to my own expenses depending on whatever your lifestyles are. And that could be a mutual discussion. If somebody needs more because they have a more expensive gym membership, like who are we to judge, right? I would say like a majority percentage of your salary goes to the joint account, and then a smaller percentage comes to your personal account for just your personal needs in that scenario. Now if one of the partners has like a way too high an income compared to the other partner, doing a standard percentage or a fixed amount would also might not also be fair, right? In that case, I'd also suggest that why not like have the salaries coming into the joint account straight away? You have the salary credited there, you have the total amount at the end of the month, let's say like, 4-5 lakhs rupees, right? It's coming into a joint account, and you decide like how much you need for your household expenses. Because in your monthly meetings that we discussed earlier, you should know how much your expenses are, your bills or mortgage or rentals, your groceries, all of those things. Based on that, you decide how much you can afford for your own personal expenses, and that can again be a mutual discussion between the primary breadwinner and the one who is financially dependent, on whether it needs to be equal or big or small, whatever percentage, right? So these are both the ways that you can actually make it work. But as you can see from my explanation, there's a lot of discussion and communication involved here, right? There's no set blanket rule that I can advise from here that you must transfer 20% for your own expenses. It is pretty much mutual, but systematically, it can be achieved no matter what levels your incomes are. You can either have your salaries credited to your individual accounts and then contribute to joint account, or credited to joint account directly and then decide on what percentage goes to your individual accounts.
Absolutely. I think so definitely differs from family to family. Like I can share for myself, like I do somewhat of the second version where of course we are getting our own incomes. Like for me, I'm a business owner. My income goes up and down every single month. My husband is working for a corporate, so he's salaried, has a fixed amount coming in. We decide to keep an X amount in our personal bank accounts and we sort of maintain close to that amount. And whatever is left over is what goes into our joint account. And over time, we had to make this switch because previously, I was paying for insurances, he was paying for the house EMI, I was paying for one credit card, he was paying for the other credit card. The bills and everything were sort of evenly divided for us, but because of course his earning potential was higher, it went even higher after I started my own business and I was just laying my roots in. We had to switch to this joint system where now all the money that we had, the corpus were getting pooled in one joint account, and all of our expenses, everything from the credit card bills, investments, insurances, house EMI, everything was going in from this one account. And then whatever money that we had set aside for investments as well, like the one that was going into our SIP, was also from this account.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then that raises the question, Arpita, that let's say the personal bank accounts you said is for personal expenses. Would you also say this is also for personal investments that you probably don't want to do as a joint investment, but you want to have like your own SIPs? So you would put aside money in your personal account for that as well.
Definitely. I mean, I would always advise, and I think a lot also depends on what is the primary goal of the investment, right? If it's for your retirement saving or you want to purchase a house together, makes sense for it to go from the joint account, because as we have discussed, the joint account will have contribution from both the partners, right? But again, like for me, I can speak for myself that when I wanted to start Cash Wisely, I did not want to take money from my husband for that. Not that he would mind, but I was sure that if it's my own hard-earned money and my own investments, I would just be like feel that it's more justified to take risks on that, right? So for that, I built those savings up and investments up in my own separate account again, right? So it's for my dreams. I did not want to put our joint income or our joint funds at risk when I'm starting up, right? So this is a very real practical example why you would want to keep certain investments purely to like from your own income, from your own savings. Similarly, if I would like to build a corpus up for my own parents, that again is something that I want to do based on my own affordability. And then again, it makes sense for me to start off those investments from my own account. And sometimes it's just that it could just be like a choice that I'm getting better returns for in a certain account, or if I have more knowledge of doing investments, then also it's completely fine to just have it from your own account.
It all goes back to communication, but having that discussion and aligning yourself based on what your goals are, then you can decide on. And I feel money talk is something that people shy away from, but it's essential to talk about money.
It's crucial,
to really build that strength of that relationship as well. But you mentioned about investing, which is actually something that it ties in with the next two mistakes that I want to talk about. Because one thing that I have seen, again, I saw this in my mother's life, I've seen it with all the women around me, somewhat for myself as well. Indian women are very good at saving. Fantastic. I think they know how to get the bang for their buck in every single expense they make in their life. All right. I think Indian mothers, especially, they get a massive high from saving that 5 rupee from
Yeah.
the sabzi wala. They are just like,
And
wow,
the
this
free
is
ka dhania.
awesome. I know Afrika Danya. It's like they get a real great, there's just they just know all the saving hacks and trips and everything, right? That's when they are just like we don't know what to do. And of course, by investing in a very traditional sense, I have still seen some of that. I think बहुत मम्मी ने ऐसा किया है कि मेरी मम्मी ऐसे बोलती थी कि मैंने जोड़ जोड़ के अपना गोल्ड का ज्वेलरी बनाया है, रोज जो हमारे घर के एक्सपेंसेस में से पैसे बचते थे, एंड देन माय मॉम वुड जस्ट पुट इट ऑल टुगेदर and buy some gold with it, and that was her way of investing. But that is, I think, the extent of investments that I have seen Indian women resort to, which is basically buying a little bit of gold here and there, right? Do you feel this is a mistake that a lot of women are making, in which they are just not knowledgeable enough about investing, and that's why they are not making the investments they need to make to secure their future?
Right. Yeah, definitely, Rinie. This had been happening, right, for generations, that women were very focused on saving, and in the name of investment would be generally gold, and especially gold jewelry. I don't remember any of our mothers or aunties saving gold bars in their
Gold bars
lockers.
and gold coins they did too.
No, it's mostly gold jewelry, right? And again, very societal issue. Luckily, we are seeing more and more women participating in the capital markets. Yet there is a huge significant portion of women in Indian population where they're still very restricted to just either savings or FDs or gold. I think this is a major mistake yet again, because the world has changed. I can tell you what used to happen in the previous generation that I've seen, how that gold would be used. First of all, you never sell the gold for returns, because there's a huge emotional attachment. This was given by my mother, this was given by my grandmother-in-law, and so I'm never going to sell that off. So you don't really invest in gold for returns. If we just keep following what previous generation did with this different societal setup and different lifestyle that we have, that's not going to work for us. It's extremely important to have investments that actually, one, beat inflation, secondly, are liquid in every sense, like emotionally or from the financially. It's liquid enough for you to support you when you need it, right? And gold, while it's a good hedge, and I advise people to have gold in their portfolio, we generally recommend gold ETFs, because, with gold jewelry, there's issues with purity, where you store it. And then for me, myself, part of my gold jewelry is in my in-laws' place, part of it is in my parents' place, and then some is with me. I don't even know, how it adds to my net worth, right? So definitely having gold in your portfolio can help if you have it in the form of gold bonds or gold ETFs. And most importantly, it's not something that really helps with your wealth building 100%, right? So a major part of your portfolio needs to be in liquid assets like mutual funds or stock portfolios. So again, that goes into the technicalities of investment, for which people will need to do like a one-on-one consultation. But I just like to emphasize that don't make that mistake of completely depending on cash or gold for your own future. It doesn't work anymore.
But it's so scary. Like, I think when we are, like, even if you are somebody who's not an investor, you have not invested a dime into a stock or a mutual fund, you keep reading news about the market falling, the market rising, and it feels scary to lose your money. It feels so much safer to put that money in the bank account and let it stay there, or put it in an FD and let it stay there. But I'm guessing neither of them are beating inflation, which is why you're basically losing money over time. Imagine that you have a woman come to you as a client who says ki I have 20,000 rupees saved up and I have this much money in my account and I want to invest this money, but I'm scared. I'm scared of losing this money. I'm scared of not even knowing where to start and what platforms to trust. So, as a financial advisor, what are the first few steps that you would advise this woman to take to at least begin her investing journey?
Interestingly, you brought something up that is the main motto of Cashvisory, because we are driven by the mission of getting every young professional to their first investments. And being a woman fintech founder, I think I all the more want more and more women participating in investments, right? So definitely something that I come across a lot, where women are coming to me that they have saved this corpus and they know they have to invest, but where to invest, how to select. Like, we talk about stocks and mutual funds and ETFs, so many names out there, right? And thankfully, Cashwiser is a platform now exists for this exact population to simplify those decisions for them, right?
So how does Cashvisory work then? Like, so if I have this money with me, what would that flow look like in Cashvisory for me to get to my first investment?
Right. Very simple. We have made the entire onboarding process as simple as it could be. Now, the first step when you want to get started with investing is really understanding your risk appetite. So by risk appetite, what I mean is, how you say that, it's very scary. The markets rise and fall, right? Different people have different reactions to that rise and fall of the market, and that actually determines your risk appetite. So the first step would be that, and on Cashwisery platform, we have a very simple questionnaire. You answer like 4 or 5 MCQs, and you get to know what your risk appetite is. Now, based on that, what you need to do is match the financial products to this risk appetite that you have. The first and the simplest products for someone who has never invested would always, from our recommendation as experts, be mutual funds. It could be just traditional. It could be mutual funds, ETFs, or index funds.
What is a mutual fund? How is it different from me investing into Apple as a stock versus me investing into a mutual fund? What's the difference?
Yeah. Very good question, Rinie. In fact, people are always confused about stocks, mutual funds, SIPs, all these names floating around, right? I'm going to simplify that in the best possible way, all these names. So first of all, what is a stock, right? Like you mentioned, Apple stock, or like, in the Indian context, it could be HDFC stock. It is a share of the company that basically helps you participate in the company's performance. Every time the stock prices go up, your investments goes up. Every time the stock price goes down, your investments go down. Now, what it entails if you invest in only just one company or a few company stocks, this means that with all the market movements of those particular stocks, right, your investments will keep going up and down, which is highly volatile. Right? If you have seen the stock market graph ever, you will know what I mean. On the other hand, funds is usually a portfolio of all of these different stocks and even other financial products. Now, what happens is usually, unless there's a market crash, all the companies don't move in the same direction. So your risks get evened out. And that is what makes mutual funds a safer alternative, more of a starting point for people who have never invested. Similarly, exchange traded funds are just mutual funds that are traded on exchange, which is your BSE and NSE. There's index funds that actually follow a particular index. Now, what is the index? You would have heard Nifty 50 and things like that. It basically tracks the top 50 companies in India. For S&P 500, tracks the top 500 companies in the world. So these index funds actually just mimic that particular basket that it's tracking. So for a Nifty 50 fund, it will track that particular index. So these are different products, but one thing that is the same in all of these products is that it is not betting on just one particular stock. That makes sure that it's a starting product for you to start your investment journey.
Absolutely. So it's just like you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Technically,
Definitely.
you would be investing in like one index fund, but in that index fund itself, because it's a combination of so many different funds, I am heavily invested into S&P 500, as well as a fund that tracks Nifty 50 as well. Because then what you're doing is that you're betting on the economy of the country. Let's say, for example, if you invest into a fund that tracks the Nifty 50 or the top 50 companies of India, you know that if the Indian economy grows, this whole thing will hopefully and most likely grow. So you're kind of dampening your risk that way. Instead of just banking on like one or two companies, now you're banking on 50 companies all at once. And I think that makes it quite easy. And is this something that you can invest into through Cashvisory as well?
Absolutely. And in fact, we go a step further. So even when you go for mutual funds, like I said, let's discuss only equity mutual funds. That means that there are different kinds of mutual funds. There are debt mutual funds, there are hybrid mutual funds, right? So you need that diversification in mutual funds as well. So instead of betting on just one kind of fund or one particular economy, why not diversify into different sectors or different geographies? And what we do is to curate this portfolio of mutual funds for you, which matches your risk profile. So what happens when you get started on Cashwisery is that, and this is completely, automated journeys, like you can just go and fill in the questionnaire. Automatically, you will be able to you will be taken to your customized portfolio, which is a group of mutual funds that we have put together that we know fulfills your goal requirements and also matches your risk appetite. So basically, you don't have to go through a fintech platform where you have to sift through 5,000 different mutual funds or so many different stocks and create a basket for yourself. All is ready made for you just to get you started from a very beginner point of view.
Absolutely. Wow, that's a huge mental load off. So let's say if somebody does have questions for you, are they able to approach you directly to be able to get your advice?
Yeah, they can book a consultation with us from our website, and we can even put the link in the description of this video. They can currently we have a promotion of a free 30-minute consultation, which is for a very limited time, and it's just because we really want to make good quality financial advice accessible to everyone. So this is our initiative and in that direction, and it's completely no obligation, no spam, guaranteed call. So just come and ask all your questions, whatever you need to, and then explore onto our app.
How lovely. I mean, how often do you get an opportunity like this where you're going to a financial advisor who isn't trying to sell you anything? They're just trying to advise you and then letting you take your own decisions. Amazing. I think we have learned so much about just about investing and not being scared of that. And this is obviously a very big financial mistake. The other financial mistake the fourth one that I want to talk to you about is that we have a spend first mindset. Okay, and I see a lot of women as well, like I going back to the same example ki from my mom I have seen this ki whatever money she got from my dad for the household expenses, she would make all the expenses first, and then whatever money was left is what she would save in her dabba, which would eventually become gold jewelry. And I feel somehow, even as women of this generation, we are still in that same mindset where we first take care of all our expenses, and whatever is left is which we go and then invest, right? Is there a different way you would recommend women to plan their finances in terms of their expenses and savings?
That is very important because all of us, and not just women, kind of have become like this, spend first, save later mindset. Because thanks to the consumerism and everywhere you're being bombarded with things that you need to buy, so it's difficult to always in the face of that prioritize savings. It takes a lot of willpower, and let's not always depend on that. So we always encourage people, and especially for women, it makes sense to have a disciplined saving habit first. And very simply, it can be incorporated into your monthly transactions by having a fixed amount that you want to save going into your savings account. It could be your own individual account that you only use for savings, or it could be a separate account depending on how you have set it up. The important part is the moment your contribution to your account comes, which could be from your own salary, the moment that contribution comes, you set aside whatever you want to save, and you can set up standing instructions from your bank so that you don't have to manually do that, because it's a monthly thing and it's an ongoing recurring thing. So just like we have monthly investments, we have monthly bills that are automated, this is one of those things as well. Consider it a bill payment to yourself or a salary payment to yourself, right? And you set that aside, and then whatever is left is what you actually is the budget for your expenses for that month. Now that works wonderfully well because you don't get to see the money. It has worked for me personally as well for years. That has helped me save up for my house, that has helped me save up for my business, or any other expense that comes up. The first thing I do is to start putting aside money for that. I don't depend on the end of the month to think about how much I can contribute to that goal. So the moment I know that I need 5 lakh rupees in a certain time frame, I will divide those 5 lakh rupees by the number of months, right? And automatically set up that standing instruction. As simple as that. And that money is not touched until that goal is achieved. That can work for your emergency funds, that can work for your savings, long-term savings, or even setting up for your immediate goals.
And are you sending this money to a different bank account altogether, or are you sending it is there some way to lock up money in your bank account itself? How does that work?
Usually, ideally, it should be to a different bank account. I mean, not a different bank, but in the same bank, you can have multiple accounts. I would strongly recommend that when you set up this account for savings, pick up a high interest account that can give you some interest in that whatever liquid savings that you have. Do not have your UPI or your ATM connected to that, because then you tend to kind of withdraw whenever the need is, or even the credit card bill payment should not go from there. That's purely only for the purpose of that particular goal that you're saving for, and you only take it out when you achieve that amount through bank transfers or whatever, that money can be accessed. So that is what I would recommend.
What's a general percentage of saving that you would say that we should make out of our household income?
Ideally, it should be between 10 to 20% at least. That varies according to the commitments that you have. If you don't have a habit of saving a certain percentage on an ongoing basis, and you see yourself living paycheck to paycheck and being at balance zero by the end of the month, maybe start with a 5%. increase it slowly to 10%, and your goal should be 20% in certain number of months, right? Because that will help you, also not immediately be forced to compromise on certain expenses or downgrade your living, because that will be demotivating, and then you may not continue with that. So I
Yeah.
would say have a small start for those who end up like, overspending. Have a 5% that goes out and slowly bring that up to 20%.
I can share what we do is because, again, we're using an investment account. As soon as the money hits, there is a monthly automated transaction that goes into that investment account, which is then again used for investments. So we don't actually ever get to see that money in our bank account
Yeah.
itself. We know that this is purely marked for long-term goals, child's education, retirement, second home. I think it's better that way, because sometimes if you see your saving as a part of your, let's say, joint account, you feel like, "Oh, I have so much money," and it might increase your short-term expenses. You might start splurging a more expensive holiday or a better phone upgrade, when actually that money was meant for your retirement, when actually that money was
Yeah.
meant for your child's education. So it's better just to cut it out
Yeah.
early,
Creating
you
different
know?
baskets, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Take it out of sight completely. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I'm not sure if I would call this a mistake, but this is an experience that I see a lot of women have, is that when we have kids, okay, a lot of women are driven, and this could be through societal expectation or their own expectation, is that we are driven to take a pause in our career, or we are driven to downgrade or step down in our careers, which obviously has an impact on our ability to earn as well. And this is something that is very personal to me, because I was in a full-time job and I was working with the Ministry of Education. And then when I had a baby, I realized that I wanted more flexibility and control over my hours. So I quit my job, started my own business, and it took so long to set things up. And I would say I would still be one of those mums who had a financial plan. I feel like I knew that even if not in the short run, but in the long run, I am working towards getting myself to be financially more able again, because I was setting up my business. But I feel a mistake that a lot of women are making is that they're quitting their jobs, or they're stepping down in their careers without a financial plan of how is it that they plan to get back into the game when there is time for it. So let's say, again, I'm going to give you the example of, there's a woman who has been working so far, and she comes to you and says that, when I have my kid, for the first 3 years, I want to take a career break. And I want to be able to dedicate time to my family, but I also don't want my financial standing to go to zero. As a financial advisor, what would you advise the woman to do to maintain some financial stability during this career break?
Right. I think it's a very relevant question. Even in today's world, most of the time we see it's the women who are ending up taking a career break due to, childbearing, and various factors contribute to that, right? But I think a very important factor today is to prepare financially for it, given the cost of living. Given, like I said, it's a more individualistic society where you do not have that much of family backing anymore. We're not that privileged anymore. So the first few steps that you must consider when you are considering a career break is, first of all the benefits that you enjoy. And I'm keeping an umbrella term here because that will help you bring like a lot of different factors into the picture, right? All the different benefits as you that you enjoy being a salaried employee or being an income earner, right? What happens to those? Now, very simple to start with is your insurance coverage. You generally have corporate benefits, right? Have you taken care of your risk management for to cover yourself during the career break? Now that includes your health insurance, your term insurance, and everything. If you have not done private insurance, get that done before you take a career break. And that becomes all the more important when you have a kid. Your risks must be covered. Your health, your life is all the more important because the child is dependent on you. So that is absolute. The first step is to cover for unforeseen circumstances. Similarly, goes for emergency funds. If you've not been maintaining a separate emergency fund for yourself and it's only the household one, have a separate one because your life's going to change drastically. You are no longer going to have an active income that your partner may have gotten used to depending on. For example, not every time the family thinks about what if we have an emergency, because now you have dual income. If the husband loses his job, then the wife can cover, and vice versa. So when one person or when the entire family is going to be dependent only on one person, there is a bigger need of an emergency fund. What if the partner also loses a job? So cover for emergency funds before you consider a career break. And then most importantly, what happens to the active income that you're getting, right? So one way to go about it is to have calculate a runway. Maybe you want to get to a savings amount that will help you tide through those years where you do not have an active income. And that may not necessarily cover for everything, but at least for basic expenses, while the rest can be contributed by your spouse's income. So whether you have calculated a runway and built up the savings, or you have built up a passive income of sorts, one thing to take note of is that your future planning should not get impacted. Because a lot of times, what I've seen is that when women take a career break, they're only thinking about those number of years, those 2 to 3 years. It's okay. My husband will contribute to my expenses. I have a house to live in, and my food is taken care of. What happens to your future planning, your SIPs, or your investment? Losing those 3 years might create, or 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever you have decided, create a huge gap in what you are going to build for yourself in the future. So whatever runway you have calculated, or the passive income or your spouse's income, must take into account that your investments also should not be compromised in those number of years. I think these three are the most important factors that is at the top of my mind. Yeah, I think being financially prepared gives you that peace of mind that you need during that career break to fully focus on yourself and your child. And then, once you are back into the game of earning your own money, technically, if you see, nothing changed. Your insurance is there, your risks are covered, you have, in fact, bigger emergency fund. Your SIPs have not been affected. So it's much easier that now you can just focus on your career and there's no major financial changes happening. Also, I think one important factor is to definitely make sure that you cover for liabilities, in the sense that if you have active EMIs or loans, make sure that your runway or your spouse's income covers for that, because that is the worst position to be in when you don't have an active income and banks chasing after you.
Oh my God, those are some very important considerations to make, because I feel like sometimes we are just so focused on the child and what the child needs, we are not quite thinking of financially how will the family fare through this. Sometimes we feel like as long as my husband is going to cover the day-to-day expenses, it's okay. But what about the other things? So we have to account for that. I feel from a very personal, again, experience I can tell you is that the biggest struggle of taking a career break is that you financially feel powerless. Okay. And the very, vulnerable thing that I went through is that I had been taking care of the many credit card bills and insurance payments and all of those things for a long time because I had a running income. And in the first few months when I was just setting up my business, I realized that I had run out of funds. Okay. And never in my life before have I ever had to ask my husband for money to ever pay any of the household expenses. But this 1 month when I had run out of funds, I had to, but I felt so powerless and almost ashamed to ask him that I actually missed my credit card payment for that month because I felt, like I shouldn't, because, I felt like a liability when previously I had felt like an asset to the family. So I think one very important thing is having conversations before you go on a career break, which goes back to all the visibility, the financial talks, having control, a lot of these things. We have to have these conversations beforehand, so then you don't end up feeling like during the financial break or the career break that you're on pocket money. You don't want to be in a situation where you feel like you're a complete dependent liability. For every small little thing you have to turn to your husband and ask for money. I think setting up joint accounts, having all those infrastructures set up before you go on a career break,
beforehand,
from a mental standpoint as well, it's going to be a huge thing. Because this moment that I went through, that 1 month where I missed my credit card payment for the first time ever, and I was slapped with a fine along with the interest charge, and it was a wake-up call for me that it cannot continue like this. I have to anticipate in this career break, I am going to be in positions where I may not be able to support financially what I was doing previously. That's where we switched to the whole joint account setup, and now I feel things are so much more smooth sailing. Everybody feels empowered. I don't feel like I've gotten the short end of the stick just because I chose to take a career break in favor for my child. So I think women who are listening to this podcast, I'm sure they will relate at a very personal level to many of these things. And I'm so glad that we got to hear from an expert and a woman to know what is it that you can do to take that step. And like you said earlier, and I'm going to tell this to all the listeners, is that you don't have to battle this out alone. ChatGPT, sure, it's a great source of information, but not for financial advice. That is not where you want to get your financial advice from. Instagram, again, it will give you like a little bit of tips and here and there, but it's not going to give you a plan. So that's where please do contact Arpita. We're going to put a link down for her consultations. She mentioned it's for a limited time, so do go and avail that now. And try platforms like Cashvisory to get your financial journey started so that you can make the wise decisions and probably not repeat the mistakes that your mother made, in her time. Thank you so much, Arpita, for joining us today.
Thank you, Rinie, for this wonderful podcast. I absolutely love, because this is a topic very close to my heart, very close to my personal experiences as well as my professional journey. And all the best to the work that you're doing. All the best to all the mothers out there.
I'm going to link down all the resources to get in touch with you, to get in touch with Cashvisory, so we can take the first step towards our investment journey. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
But
when it comes to investing, that's when the hands freeze.